My cousin emptied my grandmother's bank account before she died and blamed me for it. At her funeral, he tearfully accepted her final gift from the lawyer, an empty envelope marked with his name. I was given the second envelope containing the deed to her house, her car, and proof he stole $247,000. I, 32 never expected to be at the center of family drama that would tear apart decades of relationships in a single afternoon. My grandmother Rose had been the cornerstone of our family, the matriarch who held everyone together with Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, and unconditional love. Her modest two-story home on Sycamore Lane was the backdrop to nearly every significant family memory I had, from birthday celebrations to graduation parties to the quiet afternoons I spent with her after my parents' divorce, learning to bake her famous apple pie while she shared stories about her youth. When Grandma Rose was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer last year at 89, the doctors gave her 6 months at most. She faced the news with the same quiet dignity she'd demonstrated throughout her life, refusing extraordinary measures and choosing instead to spend her remaining time at home, surrounded by the memories she'd built over 7 decades in the same house. As her condition deteriorated, our family took turns providing care, rotating through a schedule that ensured she was never alone. My cousin Jason and I assumed the bulk of the responsibilities. We'd both been especially close to Grandma Rose throughout our lives, though in very different ways. I had maintained a consistent relationship with her, visiting weekly even before her illness, helping with household repairs, and calling regularly. Jason's relationship with her had been more sporadic, intense periods of attention interspersed with long absences, usually coinciding with personal financial difficulties that Grandma Rose inevitably helped him resolve. At 36, Jason had never quite found his footing in life. He'd bounced between jobs, relationships, and apartments, always with a new scheme that was going to solve all his problems. In contrast, I had built a stable if unexciting career as a high school history teacher, saved carefully for a modest home of my own, and maintained the same small circle of close friends since college. These differences had never been an issue between us until Grandma Rose's illness. As her primary caregivers, Jason and I established an uneasy routine. I would spend mornings with her before heading to school, return in the evenings to prepare dinner and administer her medications, and stay overnight on weekends. Jason would cover the daytime hours when I was teaching, as his current employment situation, or lack thereof, allowed for this flexibility. Other family members would fill in occasionally, but the responsibility fell primarily to us. 3 months into this arrangement, I began noticing concerning patterns. Grandma Rose's purse would be in different locations than where she kept it. Mail would be opened before I arrived, then hastily restuffed into envelopes. Her checkbook, which she had always kept meticulously balanced despite her illness, showed signs of pages being removed. When I gently inquired about these discrepancies, Grandma Rose dismissed them as the result of her chemo brain, forgetting where she placed things or what she'd done with them. I might have accepted this explanation if not for 2 troubling incidents. First, I arrived one morning to find Grandma Rose in tears, clutching a bank statement she couldn't make sense of. Several large withdrawals had been made from her checking account over the previous month, withdrawals she had no recollection of authorizing. When I suggested we contact the bank to report potential fraud, she became uncharacteristically agitated, insisting we not make a fuss and attributing her confusion to medication side effects. The second incident occurred when I overheard Jason on the phone in Grandma's kitchen, speaking in hushed tones about an investment opportunity that required immediate action, assuring the person on the other end that he would have the rest of the funds by Friday. When he realized I had entered the room, he hurriedly ended the call and explained he was helping a friend with financial advice, an explanation that rang hollow given Jason's own history of financial mismanagement. My suspicions fully aroused, I decided to quietly investigate. I made copies of Grandma Rose's recent bank statements when she was napping, documented the discrepancies in her checkbook, and noted the timing of the suspicious withdrawals, all of which had occurred during Jason's shifts. I contacted her bank directly, using the financial power of attorney she had granted me when her illness was first diagnosed, and requested a detailed accounting of all transactions over the previous 6 months, including copies of processed checks and withdrawal slips. What I discovered was devastating. Over $50,000 had been withdrawn from Grandma Rose's accounts in incremental amounts, with withdrawal slips bearing signatures that were poor imitations of her handwriting. Several checks had been written to cash, supposedly for household expenses but totaling amounts far beyond what her modest lifestyle required. Most damning were the 2 cashier's checks made out to Jason directly, which he had told Grandma were for investment management services he was providing, helping to maximize her estate for eventual distribution to the family. Armed with this evidence, I faced an impossible dilemma. Confronting Jason directly might protect Grandma Rose's remaining assets but would create family conflict that would distress her during her final months. Involving the authorities would mean subjecting her to questioning and potential court appearances when she barely had the strength to sit up in bed. Doing nothing meant allowing the systematic theft to continue, potentially leaving Grandma Rose without sufficient funds for her end-of-life care. I chose what I thought was the most compassionate path, a private meeting with Jason away from Grandma's house, presenting the evidence directly but offering a chance to make amends without legal consequences if he returned the money and stepped away from Grandma's care. It was the wrong choice. Jason's response was to go immediately on the offensive. He not only denied the accusations but claimed that I had been the one stealing from Grandma Rose, using my access to her accounts and financial power of attorney to siphon funds for myself. He stormed out of our meeting and drove straight to Grandma's house, where several family members had gathered for a Sunday visit. By the time I arrived, he had already shared his version of events, complete with manufactured evidence consisting of doctored bank statements and tearful proclamations of his innocence. The scene I walked into was chaotic. My mother and two aunts were consoling a distraught Grandma Rose, who looked confused and betrayed. My uncle was on the phone with their family attorney. Jason sat at the kitchen table, the picture of wounded dignity, as he detailed how he had discovered my supposed theft and felt morally obligated to expose it despite knowing how it would hurt everyone involved. For a family that had always avoided conflict at all costs, this explosive situation was unprecedented. The lines were quickly drawn, those who believed Jason's elaborate lies and those few who harbored doubts but weren't sure what to believe. Grandma Rose herself seemed unable to process the competing claims, her already fragile health further compromised by the emotional turmoil. In the weeks that followed, the family fractured along these lines. I was excluded from the caregiving rotation, allowed to visit Grandma Rose only when other family members were present to supervise. Jason, meanwhile, positioned himself as her primary protector, spending increasing amounts of time at her house and further isolating her from those who might question his narrative. Through it all, I maintained a quiet dignity, continuing to gather evidence and documentation while respecting the family's temporary boundaries. I believed that truth would eventually prevail, though I worried it might come too late for Grandma Rose to know it. As her condition deteriorated, a strange calm seemed to settle over the family conflict. We established an unspoken truce in her presence, maintaining civility for her comfort while the undercurrents of suspicion and resentment continued to flow beneath the surface. Jason became increasingly confident, even smug, as his position as family hero solidified. I noticed, however, that Grandma Rose watched us both with an inscrutable expression during these interactions, her eyes moving between us thoughtfully despite her physical weakness. 2 months after the initial confrontation, Grandma Rose asked to speak with her attorney alone. The family respected her request, though Jason waited anxiously in the hallway, pacing outside the closed door of her bedroom throughout the 3-hour meeting. When the attorney finally emerged, his expression was professional but unreadable. He declined to share the content of their discussion, stating only that Grandma Rose had made some adjustments to her estate planning that would be revealed at the appropriate time. A week later, Grandma Rose passed away peacefully in her sleep, with my aunt keeping vigil at her bedside. The family gathered immediately, grief temporarily superseding the ongoing conflict. The funeral arrangements proceeded according to the detailed instructions she had left, culminating in a service that perfectly captured her practical, unsentimental approach to life. She had requested no eulogies, just her favorite hymns and a simple reception afterward at her home. It was at this reception that the family drama reached its crescendo. Grandma Rose's attorney, Mr. Harrington, who had handled her legal affairs for over 40 years, arrived carrying a leather portfolio. After offering his condolences, he asked if he might address the assembled family members for a few minutes regarding some instructions Rose had left with him. The room quieted as everyone found seats, the tension palpable as we anticipated the reading of her will. Mr. Harrington began by explaining that Rose had been quite specific about wanting certain matters addressed immediately following her funeral, rather than in a formal office setting at a later date. He removed 2 sealed envelopes from his portfolio, each bearing a name written in Grandma Rose's distinctive handwriting. One envelope was thick, clearly containing multiple documents. The other was thin, seemingly empty. The first name he called was Jason's. My cousin rose with an expression of solemn gratitude, accepting the thin envelope with a performative humility that made my stomach turn. Mr. Harrington instructed him to open it immediately, as per Grandma Rose's explicit instructions. With the entire family watching, Jason carefully opened the envelope and peered inside. His expression shifted from anticipation to confusion as he tilted the envelope, revealing it to be completely empty. Before he could speak, Mr. Harrington explained that Rose had left a message to be read alongside this envelope. The attorney unfolded a letter and began to read in his measured, professional voice, "To my grandson Jason, I leave this empty envelope as a symbol of the emptiness you will feel when you realize that deception and theft bring no lasting satisfaction. I know what you have done. I have known for some time. This envelope contains exactly what you deserve from my estate after taking what was not freely given." A stunned silence fell over the room. Jason's face flushed deep red, then drained to ashen white as he looked around at the shocked expressions of our family members. He started to speak, but Mr. Harrington held up a hand, indicating he had not finished. "The second envelope," the attorney continued, "is addressed to my grandson Michael." I stood on unsteady legs, aware of all eyes turning toward me as I accepted the thick envelope. Like Jason, I was instructed to open it immediately. Inside I found several documents: the deed to Grandma Rose's house, the title to her modest car, and a detailed accounting prepared by a forensic accountant documenting every unauthorized withdrawal Jason had made from her accounts over the past year, totaling $247,000. Also included was a handwritten letter from Grandma Rose, which Mr. Harrington asked me to read aloud to the assembled family. With a dry mouth and pounding heart, I unfolded the pages and began. "My dearest Michael, if you are reading this, then I have passed on and you are finally free from the cloud of suspicion that has shadowed the final months of my life. I want you to know that I never believed you had taken anything from me. When Jason first made his accusations, I was confused and distressed, my mind clouded by medication and the fog of illness. But as I observed both of you in the weeks that followed, the truth became increasingly clear. I have never been as helpless or confused as I allowed you all to believe. When I first noticed discrepancies in my accounts, I began keeping a separate record, documenting the timing of missing funds and who had been present on those days. I noted how Jason would check my mail before you arrived, how he would suggest I take an extra pain pill when bank statements were due, how papers would disappear from my desk only to reappear in slightly different arrangements. Rather than confront him immediately, I chose to watch and wait. I wanted to give him the opportunity to come forward voluntarily, to make amends of his own accord. When your confrontation with him led only to deeper deception and your unjust vilification, I knew I needed to act decisively but discreetly. I contacted Mr. Harrington and arranged for a forensic accountant to carefully trace all the missing funds. Every check, every withdrawal, every transfer has been documented and matched to Jason's presence in my home. The evidence is incontrovertible. Copies have been provided to the authorities, though I have requested they take no action until after my funeral. I did not want my final days consumed by legal proceedings. To you, Michael, I leave my home, where I hope you will continue to create the kind of warm memories for your own family that we shared within these walls. I leave my car, which has many good years left in it, just as I had many good years left in me before this illness. And I leave you the responsibility of deciding how to proceed regarding the funds Jason has taken. The evidence provided would be sufficient for criminal charges, but I leave that decision to your judgment. Sometimes justice takes forms other than legal punishment. Sometimes the loss of family trust and respect is penalty enough. Whatever you decide, know that you have my complete confidence and support from beyond this life. To the rest of the family who doubted Michael, who accepted Jason's lies without question, who shut out a good man during the time he most needed community and support, I offer no criticism. Deception can be convincing, especially when delivered by someone you have loved and trusted. I ask only that you examine your hearts and actions, and consider what amends might be appropriate. I have lived a long and fortunate life, blessed with family who brought me great joy. Even this final painful chapter has had its purpose, revealing character and truth in ways that might otherwise have remained hidden. Remember me not with sadness but with the same practical acceptance with which I faced my final days. Love each other well, forgive when possible, and always seek truth, even when it is difficult to hear. With eternal love, Grandma Rose. As I finished reading, the room remained silent. Jason stood frozen, the empty envelope still clutched in his hand, his carefully constructed narrative collapsing around him. Various family members displayed a range of emotions: shock, embarrassment, anger, grief. My Aunt Martha, who had been particularly vocal in her condemnation of me, quietly began to weep. Jason finally broke the silence with a desperate attempt to salvage his position. She was confused, he insisted, his voice cracking. The medication affected her mind. She didn't understand. She understood perfectly, Mr. Harrington interrupted, his professional demeanor giving way to a flash of personal indignation. Rose was more clear-headed and determined during our final meeting than many clients half her age. She anticipated your response and prepared for it. He removed another document from his portfolio. This is a neuropsychological evaluation performed 2 weeks before her death, confirming her cognitive capacity and decision-making abilities were unimpaired by either her illness or her medication. At this point, Jason abandoned all pretense of dignity. He threw the empty envelope to the floor, directed a venomous glare at me, and stormed out of the house, slamming the door with such force that one of Grandma Rose's delicate china plates fell from the wall and shattered. In the days that followed, the family began a painful process of reconciliation and accountability. Those who had been quick to believe Jason's accusations approached me with remorse and apologies. Some I accepted immediately, recognizing the genuine regret behind them. Others would take more time, the wounds still too fresh for instant forgiveness. As for Jason, he disappeared immediately after the funeral reception. We later learned he had emptied his apartment that same night and left the state. Occasional social media updates suggested he was moving from city to city, always with a new business venture or investment opportunity that never seemed to materialize into stable employment. Family members would receive sporadic messages asking for financial help, always accompanied by elaborate stories of temporary setbacks and promises of imminent success. I chose not to pursue criminal charges, honoring Grandma Rose's suggestion that perhaps the loss of family trust was punishment enough. However, I did insist on full financial disclosure to all family members, ensuring everyone understood exactly what had transpired. The hope for eventual restitution remains, though it seems increasingly unlikely as Jason continues his nomadic lifestyle, apparently unchanged by the experience. As for me, I moved into Grandma Rose's house 6 months after her passing, once I had processed my grief enough to face the memories contained within its walls. I kept her furniture, her photographs, even her collection of handwritten recipe cards, now protected in plastic sleeves in the same wooden box where she had stored them. Each Sunday, I still bake her apple pie, sometimes alone with my thoughts, sometimes with family members who drop by with increasing frequency as old wounds slowly heal. The hardest lesson from this experience wasn't about Jason's betrayal or the family's initial rejection. It was learning that sometimes the people we love can see the truth clearly but choose to reveal it in their own time, for reasons we may not fully understand until later. Grandma Rose could have exposed Jason's theft immediately. She could have spared me months of family estrangement and emotional turmoil. Instead, she observed, evaluated, and ultimately crafted a resolution that revealed not just the financial deception but the character of everyone involved. In her final act, my grandmother taught me that justice doesn't always arrive when or how we expect it, but truth eventually finds its way to the surface if we have the patience to wait for it. It's a lesson I carry with me daily as I walk the halls of her home, now my home, surrounded by the tangible reminders of a woman whose wisdom extended far beyond her simple, unassuming exterior. Last week, as I was cleaning out an old desk drawer, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it, tucked behind a stack of utility bills. Inside was a single sheet of paper containing a recipe I'd never seen before, not for a dish, but for life, equal parts honesty and compassion, a generous measure of patience, and just enough forgiveness to balance the flavor. Apply heat only when necessary, and remember that the most important ingredient is time. It was signed simply, Love, Rose. Some family legacies are measured in property and possessions. Others, the more valuable ones, are passed down in lessons that continue to reveal themselves long after the teacher has gone. In the quiet moments of my grandmother's house, with the scent of apple pie filling the kitchen she loved, I feel her presence and her final, most important gift, not the house or the car or even the vindication, but the example of how to face life's injustices with dignity, strategic patience, and unwavering clarity. That, more than anything listed in her will, is the inheritance I treasure most.